is healthy. He's in the Twins rotation. It's Pablo Lopez.
Hey, man.
Um,
What's up, Pablo?
you and
How
I
you
both
doing?
had Pablo inside of the top 10 last year. We course corrected. I think it's important to acknowledge when you're too high on somebody. And I think that you and I, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think for me it was ranking Pablo Lopez based too much on the upside that I thought he had
Mm,
versus the full scope of what his outcomes could be. I still think Pablo Lopez could be a top 10 starter in fantasy baseball. I still believe he has that potential in him, but I think last year I ranked him based on that potential instead of ranking him based on like where's like that I talked about like that 75% outcome. Like where is
yeah.
the likely outcome where he ends up? I think this is much safer. I have him at 16, you have him at 20.
So I think last year I also favored the volume expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And that wasn't wrong, actually. I think that was one of the bigger pushbacks against Pablo was health track record, and that wasn't
Yes, for sure.
the case. Um, and the real thing that we didn't see coming, I think, was the changeup just not being there. I mean, he even said like the changeup is always there in that video that we had last year, going over a full game with him, and it wasn't. And then the sweeper was all of a sudden just gone for like 2 months of the year. And I remember talking to him about it, and he finally said, one day I just stopped overthinking it, and I just gripped it as hard as I could, and I just threw it. And like I just gripped it and ripped it, and like didn't think about it anymore. And then all of a sudden it came back to me, and that's great. Um, I feel like with Pablo Lopez, he's in a moment where if the changeup isn't quite what it used to be, which I'm kind of just accepting that at this point, and the sweeper is good, but not really a pitch that he wants to throw against left-handers, for example. It should be that changeup. The changeup isn't quite that thing. We saw a lot of starts last year that he relied on his four-seamer and sinker, really more
Mm-hmm.
so his four-seamer. And with 7.2 feet of extension at 95 plus, I'm gonna, really try and emphasize, hey, you should be throwing more of these sinkers inside. This is the Zach Wheeler approach. You can do that. And we even see that with Hunter Brown, for example, who embraced this four-seamer up and sinker inside that jams guys. He actually throws more sinkers than four-seamers, Hunter Brown. And I understand that you see this 15% swing strike rate on the four-seamer for Pablo Lopez's heater, but it's actually a pitch that gets hit. And oh man, I get worried watching Pablo a lot, trying to do everything with his four-seamer.
Right.
And I realize that I don't feel confident in Lopez like I do with, I don't know, Yamamoto splitter in 2 strike counts, or
Mm-hmm.
Glasnow slider, or Chris Sale slider. Like he doesn't have that overwhelming pitch, kind of the thing that we talked about with Cutter Crawford last year, right? Where it's just like, okay, here's the thing. It used to be the changeup. It's not there anymore. So that has me a little like, well, okay, hold on. You are going to continue to allow
Right.
hits. And hits are, yeah, this is why he has a 112 whip as like his best outcome. He's not a guy that can be a 105 whip guy until that changeup really becomes that thing again, until he has a way to keep guys off that fastball as much as he has to throw it. That's concerning. And I don't want to be drafting a guy in the top 15 that I don't expect to have a whip under 110, or at least can have that.
Right.
That to me was the difference maker for Pablo Lopez. And that's why you see the 408 ERA 119 whip of 2024, right? There is that opportunity. Yes, it was much better as the season went on. He had turmoil early that he corrected, still had elevated whip in that time later. I like it. It's just he's an SP2 for me.
Yeah. And to me, like, my ranking of him at 16 also suggests that he's an SP2. I consider him a high end SP2. And so I have him there because I think there is ace upside. I just don't think you're as likely to get it as we thought we were last time. We both are pretty high on Justin Steele, and I just took him in the 10th round of a 12 team draft and hold. It was like pick 122. There are so many pitchers who you and I have ranked behind him getting drafted before him. If that continues in draft season, I expect a lot of Justin Steele on my rosters. I love what you said, where we talked about him a little bit in the offseason. You mentioned, obviously, we know he hurt his hamstring on opening day, and we know that he was out for a while. And his first couple starts when he was back off the IL were, choppy as can be expected. But from March 27th to the end of the season, which is basically when Justin Steele was like healthy and ready to go, a 2.47 ERA, a 1.08 WHIP, 112 strikeouts to 31 walks in 109 and a third innings. That's elite production from a healthy Justin Steele. I think this guy is a good bet for 10 wins, 160, 170 innings, solid ratios. I went on Fangraphs today. Every projection is for him to be worse than he's been over the last 2 seasons. I don't get it. I don't know why we're projecting him for like a 1.26 WHIP and
I don't
like
know.
a 3.7 ERA. Like he's just never been that dude. I don't get it.
I don't get it at all. It's funny because I've been converted. I was not a Justin Steele fan entering last year. I saw pretty much his 117 WHIP, 130 WHIP, and I saw only 2 pitches at the time. I was naive, and I thought there's just no way this kind of continues. No, it's good. It's really good. In that stretch, I actually have it ended a little bit earlier because he had that nerve annoying stuff with his elbow soreness, but not a tear, nothing to worry about. So they delayed him for 2 weeks. I thought they were just going to shut him down, but no, they just 2 weeks, and he even got more whatever starts at the end. But this was a 4-month stretch of being in rhythm, as you mentioned, and all the good stuff, but a 32% ICR. That that's the good stuff. That is what makes Justin Steele so good. He's someone who has really good contact suppression and also gets strikeouts. The thing that I say that I look for every year, right? I learned this. This is the Alcantara, the Wheeler method. Okay, you can even say it's the Gilbert and the George Kirby method too. Is you find these starters who are comfortably going to go 6 innings that are just like relied upon for their team to say, hey, look, you're going every 5 days and you can go 6 innings. You throw enough strikes that you have good enough control that you can get there efficiently to bet in 90 and change pitches. And you're not going to give me a 20% K rate. Right. You have a floor of good ratios, 180 innings that we expect every 5 days, whatever, with strikeout potential of being able to go 25% or higher. That is the thing that everyone should be thinking about with these guys. It's why I try to hesitate away from like a Ryan Pepio, for example, because Pepio, I don't think the Rays are going to let him do that. I think it's going to be a little more controller. So it's why I actually have a little weirdness about Jared Jones, but whatever. And this is Justin Steele, 26% K rate in that stretch, right? He is so good looking 4-seamers upstairs and then adding cut action. Oh my gosh, he has like 2 4-seamers that he manipulates based on whatever he wants. That comes inside to right-handers. It's like he has his own 2-seamer or sinker to pair with the 4-seamer, right? And then he has 2 versions of his slider. He has a tighter one and then a bigger, loopier one. And it's like he has 4 pitches. He's really, really good at commanding these. I can't express this enough. A 25% ICR on that slider to right-handed batters is just ridiculous against opposite-handed batters. I love it. I think Justin Steele is going to be such a good play for this year, and the fact that we have him and we're able to get him in the 9th, 10th round is everything that you want. He's the perfect SP2 that can be your SP1 for the year, Justin Steele.
Yeah, and I listen. I even think you might be able to, depending on your strategy, like you could even draft pitchers you have behind him ahead of him and let him fall. That's how much he falls in drafts. We'll see how obviously how that changes. I love the fact that Bailey Ober was like, I just love the story of Bailey Ober because he was not always that tall and he was kind of like a command first guy who got taller, who grew into a little bit more of his body, grew into that extension, started putting together like a strong, he just has reshaped who he is as a pitcher. I love the change he made last year, breaking his slider into like a sweepier slider and more of a hard cutter. We've talked so much about how the second season of pitchers throwing new pitches tends to be a little better for them because they have more consistency with them. I don't think it's crazy to expect a better year from Ober than what we saw last year as this new pitch mix takes shape. I just think he's rock solid.
Yeah, no, Bailey Ober, he has a home run problem. Pointed that out really well yesterday on the craft. And Bailey Ober is someone that I think just gets better. He obviously had that start of the year that was terrible, and everyone was so upset and enraged about it. He also had the game against Atlanta. Um, he had essentially 2 games that were 17 earned runs that really messed up the ERA. He still had it underneath 3.98, to be fair. It isn't always fun to say, oh, but if you just remove his worst games, then everything is fine.
Right.
But it shouldn't be 17 in 2 games, right? And the way I see it with Bailey Ober is he has this elite extension. He used to pepper the top of the zone with 4-seamers. He was Bailey Ober Rizzi at that time. And it came down last year. We're talking like in 79, 80% high location last year, versus this past year was more like 60 to 63%. So that's still really high and good. However, Bailey Ober, I think, should be able to get that fastball upstairs again. And if he does, that makes the cutter much better. That makes the changeup that is still so good elite again. And yeah, once again, 6 innings consistently with the Twins. He's going to get a lot of wins again. He's going to have that low whip because he doesn't walk guys, and this stuff is hard to hit. And also the cutter off of the 4-seamer, it might be not as effective as other ones that we've seen with the elite extension because he's not at 95 or so. He's at 91, 92. But I still love that. I feel like those should be pitches that are really hard to tell with that extension that look similar and pair off of each other. So I'm a big fan of this with Bailey Ober. I think it's relatively safe, good whip, good strikeouts. It's just about, can you just get that 4-seamer back up again, and that should limit the home runs.
At the end of the day, you decided this is where he belongs. But why was there hesitation? Why is this where he belongs? What are your thoughts on Tanner Bybee?
Tanner Bybee, so I wrestled with Tanner Bybee in the past, essentially just like watching him and feeling like he's not the best command guy, especially with the slider and the changeup. And I think against lefties, there's still a little bit of annoyance watching him, especially like he doesn't get the changeup down nearly as much as I want him to. He has this cutter now that is actually helping a ton. And I wonder if he's going to increase its usage from 50% last year against lefties, as it had 26% ICR. And honestly, that is the game changer for me. I know that in previous years, it was more just the slider. But I think this extra cutter to lefties is really helping make me comfortable drafting Tanner Bybee, where the 4-seamer isn't really a good pitch at all. I mean, it's much worse against the left-handers, a 10% swing strike rate, a 47% ICR there. And at least it's down to 43 against right-handers. He's able to utilize the slider and cutter much more effectively. But it's the same mold. I mean, all these guys are kind of that same idea of like, I have this tier of, okay, you're giving me 6 innings. I feel that like the Cleveland Guardians, come on, every day, you're going to do this. You're going to be there and doing it. At least you have the opportunity to. The walk rate got better last year. Found more strikes. The cutter helped massively. That cutter to right-handers was also very good. 20% swing strike rate with a 66% strike rate. That's so good. The striker is 54%. I'll take that all day. I like Tanner Bybee now. It's wild. I still think the 4-seamer is not very good, and he should throw it less. Please throw it less to left-handers, and probably against right-handers too. I do like the slider still. It is more aggressive. It's a little bit harder, a little bit softer, and a little more movement. Very effective against righties with a 70% strike rate and 21% swing strike rate. Like, that's amazing. That's so good. Throw more of those. Stop going 43% 4-seamer on a pitch that's a 43% ICR. I don't like that, Tanner Bybee. But those things are so filthy. They continue to miss bats a ton, induce weak contact. I think those adjustments can be made even more to make him better. And a 3.47 ERA, 112 WHIP last year with a 26% carry rate. Like, I love this. I'm amazed, but like I'm very much in on Tanner Bybee now. So yeah, it's strange.
Yeah.
This is a strange feeling.
It is. I have him 28. I'm a little lower than you, but there's some guys we'll talk about, some veterans that we'll talk about in later episodes that I have just slightly ahead of Bybee, where I just feel pretty good about like their relative safety and consistency. And maybe I should with Bybee as well, because he hasn't been bad at any stretch in his MLB career, and maybe he's just as consistent as some of those veteran arms.
Yeah, I mean, it's really the cutter. The cutter showed up. And it might be like, no, Nick, that's the slider. it's slightly harder, and he's able to utilize it much better,
Yeah.
especially against left-handers. I want to really reiterate that against left-handers in 2023, Tanner Bybee's slider had a 14% usage and was just bad. It was 58% strike rate with a 9% swing strike rate, right? He couldn't trust this thing. However, in 2024, that cutter showed up, and now he's throwing this 15% of the time for 67% strikes and a 17% swing strike rate and low ICR,
Mhm.
right? And that made him more confident with the slider, and that also got used. So then you took that low usage slider that wasn't effective and now turned it into a 25, 26% usage pitch that is very effective, right? That's a huge gain for Tanner Bybee. I can't emphasize that enough. That's like a major difference for him, and I'm in. Go get
Yeah.
him. Just go get Tanner
Okay.
Bybee, guys. Like, don't go after all the other big names, all the big risks and stuff. I'm just like, you know what? Just wait longer. Get Tanner Bybee. It's all good. Steele and Ober and Tanner Bybee. I kid you not. I could probably do my drafts like 7th, 8th, 9th round. That's reaching for those guys in 12 teamers.
Yeah.
8, 9, 10. Like, great. That sounds wonderful.
This is going to be the first like pretty big discrepancy we have right now because you're 25th ranked starting pitcher. I have 41st, and it's Bryce Miller,
Oh, you have
and
41st?
I have him 41st. I will
Oh,
say,
wow.
I said in my breakdown,
Yep.
uh, Bryce Miller has an elite four-seam fastball, but no secondary pitch that is consistently a plus pitch. They all flash plus at times, but it's a roll of the dice to see which pitch shows up in which start. He started messing around with a cutter last year and has been posting videos of him throwing it in the offseason. And if that pitch looks legit early in spring, I may move Miller up to the top of the next tier, which would mean that Miller would then move up to like 33.
Okay.
So a little closer to you. But
So
yeah, that's kind of my thoughts is like like it, love the idea of the cutter. I think I need to see it before I'm gonna adjust it
yeah,
too much.
no, that totally makes sense. I think this is two things for me. Of one, like we can say everything that we want about okay, the anti-cores of Seattle and 294 ERA and 0.98 WHIP, and yeah, we know that the 237 BABIP isn't turning around again, and all this stuff. 6.5 hit per nine should probably go up to like 7.5, and it changes everything. I'm not going to believe that whatever we saw from Bryce Miller in 2024 is the same person we see in 2025. I think
Mm-hmm.
there are certain guys for me personally that I'm more willing to give the development stick to. And it's a stick. It's one you hold in like, a Quaker meeting or whatever it is. You're the one who's talking right now. I'm like, okay, hey, who's going to develop? You are. Bryce Miller, you got the stick. Okay. And tell us how you feel. So with his vast arsenal, that to me is an indication of a guy trying to figuring this out and him trying to experiment with this and that and to see him working on the cutter now. And we saw the splitter show up last year and it had moments that it helped him too. There is also this idea that the four seamer is always going to be good against right-handers and he just needs something else to work against left-handers. I also like the sinker being used against right-handers as well. I think that was a very effective move for him. We had a 34% ICR on that sinker, and he threw it 26% of the time against righties, while 44% ICR on the four-seamer. Right now, whiffs 18% swing strike rate on that four-seamer to right-handers, which is still really good. And even if you want to do the home road splits, and by the way, guys, oh my gosh, guess what? We have home road splits in the repertoire section on Pitcher List. If you didn't know this, our player page is like I made these so that I could do the pitching analysis I wanted to do. And we keep adding all these things that we want. You can separate inside that arsenal section, the repertoire section, home road split pitches. And Bryce Miller's four-seamer is still a 16% swing strike rate on the road. So understand that this is an elite pitch. It's not just Seattle doing all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, when it comes to what I expect for Bryce Miller this year, I think something's going to click. It should be the cutter. I think that makes the most sense. And I'm willing to bank that the four-seamer is still going to be really good. The sinker's going to be really good. And both of those combined against right-handers is going to work. And that's just going to be cool. You have right-handers kind of figured out. You need like something else maybe to go away from them every so often. You'll have some collection sprinkle of breaking balls. Fine,
Just
it'll
a
be
little
okay.
sprinkle.
Yeah, just a little touch. Some like 9% sweepers and like 7% sliders and whatever. But then against lefties, you can't throw the sinker. So what is that pitch? I think it'll be the cutter.
Yeah.
It makes all the sense in the world to me.
I
And
he
I trust him to go every 5 days and be able to go
Sure.
decently far. That is the one question. He's not as efficient for 6 innings, I think, than others because he doesn't have that definitive out pitch against lefties. I think he can get that. And it's just a very good situation for him.
Yeah, listen, I like Bryce Miller. I anticipate moving him up my rankings in the spring if he looks like I think he will look with this cutter, which I think will be we know will be part of what he's. It's not just like rumors. We have seen videos that he himself has posted of the
Yeah.
cutter, so we know he's working it in. We just got to see it happen. But I'm excited to see it happen. I'm excited to move him up when it does happen.